The satin weave. As you can remember from our section on woven fabrics, the satin weave is one of our three main weave types. It has warp yarns that float over 4 or more weft yarns. These floats are staggered from one row to the next, so a diagonal twill rib is never formed. The result is a smooth surface, perfect for exaggerating the shine of silk. The satin weave is most associated with silk fabrics, as we mostly find silk fabrics or the satin weave using silk fibers, although it can be used in any other fiber. Silk fabrics woven with the satin weave have a super lustrous surfaces that are very pretty, but are weak in strength and prone to snagging. As we remember, the satin weave is created for beauty, not for strength. Charmeuse. This soft, fluid fabric is a perfect example of the luster a satin weave can bring out. This super shiny fabric is luxurious and very common in the world of silks. Although it is very beautiful, lightweight, and moves with a super watery fluid drape, it is notoriously hard to sew and work with. Any fabric that moves very well, so can flutter and have a watery drape, and is shiny, is hard to work with. It moves and it slips seemingly every which way that you don't want it to. Duchess satin, bridal satin, and peau de soie. Duchess satin, bridal satin, and peau de soie are all names for silk satins that share very similar properties. They are all medium weight and can get a little to the heavy side, stiff to semi-crisp, with a medium to high luster. They are all dense, very expensive, and have been often used in wedding gowns and other formal dresses, hence the name bridal satin. Peau de soie, on the other hand, is French for silk, skin of silk, and does not use the satin weave. Despite its luster, it uses a tight plain weave. So it's not a true satin. However, many people may call it satin because it is silk and because it is shiny. Peau de soie has a tendency to curl up on itself. For the most part, if you find a stiff, medium weight, shiny silk, it is either Duchess satin or bridal satin. Peau de soie is relatively hard to find. So, how do we tell the difference between a charmeuse and a bridal satin? First, it's important to note that satin is just a weave type. It does not indicate a fabric type. However, many people use the phrase satin to refer to any type of shiny silk. But this is an oversimplification. Truly, any fiber woven with a satin weave can be technically considered a satin. So this is a relatively large family and doesn't necessarily need to be a silk fiber. However, in the silk family, there are two types of fabrics known for their shininess and use the satin weave. They are charmeuse and bridal satin, or Duchess satin. They are similar in weight and appearance, although charmeuse is somewhat lighter in weight. The real difference between the two fabrics is in their movement. Charmeuse will move fluidly and softly, while bridal satin and Duchess satin was much more stiff and crisp in their movement. Here you can see the difference in their movement in the videos. On the left, we can see charmeuse flutter and fluidly drape in easily forming ripples. It's quite lovely and mesmerizing. Bridal satin on the right is stiff. It doesn't have the softness or flow. It's a bit more springy and stiff. So if you're unsure whether a fabric is charmeuse or a bridal satin or a type of satin in this family, just move it around a bit. You should be able to easily tell the difference. Next, we will talk about silks that use the jacquard weave. Remember that jacquard weaves are woven on a special loom that can handle very, very complex weave types. They typically combine all of our weave types, satin, twill, and plain, to create very complex and intricate patterns that are woven directly into the fabric. So the designs are not printed, they are woven. Brocade. Though this rich, dense fabric was originally an all silk fabric, it is hard to find with this composition today. Typically, it will use either all synthetic fibers or a blend of the two. If it is all silk, it is very expensive. It's expensive even when it uses all synthetic fibers. And this is because of the complexity of the weave itself. It takes a long time to weave, even on an automated loom like a jacquard loom. Some very complex brocades will take an extremely long amount of time to weave. This fabric is easily recognized, however, by its complex, multicolored pattern that is woven directly into the fabric using the jacquard loom. Brocade is stiff and heavy in weight because of all the different colored threads needed to weave it. Brocade is not reversible like a lot of jacquard fabrics are. So this is an easy way to tell a brocade from other jacquard fabrics. Look at the front. It is usually richly colored in pattern. However, if you flip it to the back, it is not as beautiful and tends to not have a reversible quality. Song brocade. Song brocade refers to the traditional type of brocade that was first developed by the Chinese during the Song dynasty, long before the jacquard loom was invented. These complex fabrics were woven by hand instead of using an automated loom. These fabrics are similar to today's brocades, but were originally hand-woven and feature images and themes traditional to the Chinese culture at the time. As you can see here, they're quite beautiful, and the brocade weave looks a lot like embroidery, but it's not embroidery. It's woven into the fabric. And these pure silk fabrics were originally reserved for people of very high status, royalty, and very high nobility. Cloquet. This lovely fabric is woven on a jacquard loom using crepe yarns, whose natural texture enhances the woven jacquard designs. Remember that crepe yarns are twisted in both directions, so they have a natural sort of volume and sort of zigzagging structure, which is perfect for cloquet in trying to bring out its texture. In addition to the crepe yarns, it has a slightly puffy and puckered texture. Also, because of the crepe yarns, it has a fluid, soft drape associated with these yarns. Damask. Damask, like all types of jacquard, can be woven out of other fibers and is commonly seen in cotton and linen varieties as well. In fact, we covered damask in the cotton section as well. However, you can have silk damask in addition to cotton. Damask is very similar to brocade, but has some differences. The woven pattern for damask is usually reversible, so it's usable on both the face and wrong sides of the fabric, where brocade is not. Damask pattern usually has a bit flatter than brocade and uses fewer satin floats. It also typically uses fewer colors than a brocade. So as we can see here, this is a one-color damask, which is probably most common, but you can see damask in different, more than one color. So it can use 2 to 3 to 4 colors, but brocade typically uses many colors. Matelassé. This fabric means quilted in French and can resemble a patterned quilted effect. However, when we think of a quilted fabric, it refers to 2 layers of fabric with a third middle layer of padding called batting. So it's really 2 layers of fabric stitched together with some fluffy stuff in the middle. Matelassé is different. Matelassé gets its pattern texture not from stitching together layers of fabric, but by the way it is woven. Matelassé is woven like a double cloth. Now, if we remember, a double cloth is essentially 2 separate layers woven together with an extra set of yarns that bind the 2 layers together. So all true double cloths have 2 sets of weft yarns and 3 sets of warp yarns. The third warp links the 2 together. The 2 layers create puffy patterns, and the puffy patterns are created by putting in different yarn tensions between the 2 layers of fabric. This is very similar to how seersucker gets the puckers in its fabric. This pattern is woven on a jacquard loom.